Welcome to Auto News Talk. Let's just unpack this because we are tracing a really fascinating chain reaction in the automotive world.
Yeah, it really is a chain reaction.
We're going to look at how global geopolitical choke points directly dictate what happens on your local dealership lot. And even more importantly, how changing consumer affordability is forcing both massive automakers and your neighborhood dealers to just completely rewrite their playbooks.
Exactly. I like to think of the automotive industry as this giant interconnected nervous system. Here's the terrain we're walking through.
Okay.
It is incredibly sensitive. A disruption on a shipping lane halfway across the world sends this shockwave that travels through corporate boardrooms, ripples across manufacturing plants, and eventually hits the price of a used hybrid sitting right in your own neighborhood.
I love that nervous system analogy because it sets up the first major piece of the puzzle. There is an analysis from Bernstein that really puts the physical reality of global trade into perspective. They make the case that regional conflict around the Strait of Hormuz poses outsized supply chain and demand risks for major non-domestic automakers.
Right. It's not just an abstract political story.
No, it is a massive physical logistics story.
What's fascinating here is the sheer volume at stake. The Strait of Hormuz is this incredibly narrow choke point connecting the Persian Gulf to the Indian Ocean. According to that analysis, it moves about 20 million barrels of crude oil daily.
Wait, 20 million?
20 million barrels daily. So when you have heightened security risks or physical disruptions, the impacts are immediate. You are looking at suddenly having to use much longer shipping routes.
Which means higher fuel costs?
Higher fuel costs, higher crew wages, and massive spikes in inventory carrying costs. Delivery autos slip, and that affects plants, ports, and eventually the dealers themselves.
But how does that actually hit specific automakers? Because clearly not every car company has the exact same exposure.
Right. The exposure for certain brands is staggering. The Bernstein analysis points out that Toyota holds roughly a 17% market share in the Middle East.
Wow, 17%.
Yeah, and Hyundai has about 10%, and the Chinese brand Chery holds around 5%. In fact, about 17% of China's total passenger vehicle exports go directly to the Middle East. So this is a highly critical market for them.
And investors are obviously watching this like hawks. The analysis notes that Stellantis shares dropped roughly 11%, reflecting a broader sensitivity to rising gas prices and product strategy concerns tied to these very disruptions.
It's that spillover effect that is so critical to understand. Even if Middle East sales are just a fraction of an automaker's total global volume, a choke point disruption ripples into wider trade lanes and completely wrecks operating margins everywhere else.
It changes the math on everything.
Exactly. The analysis offers an incredibly vivid detail on this. A sustained disruption would add 10 to 14 days to shipping transit times just from having to reroute vessels around the danger zone.
Just think about the sheer physics of that. 10 to 14 days. That is a massive lag in an industry that relies entirely on just-in-time manufacturing. Imagine adding 2 full weeks of fuel and operational costs to every single massive cargo ship on the ocean.
It is mind-boggling when you scale it up.
And of course, macro models always have variables. The missing piece of this puzzle, what it doesn't quite answer, is exactly how much inventory buffer dealerships actually have on the ground to weather a 14-day delay before consumer deliveries are visibly halted. Are there enough cars parked at domestic ports to hide that 2-week delay from you, the consumer?
That is the ultimate question, and it perfectly bridges the gap between global waters and local asphalt, because eventually that macro shockwave makes landfall.
Which brings us right to the local squeeze on the dealership lot. If you look at how dealerships are reacting on the ground, the strategy is completely shifting. A dealer brief focusing on those Strait of Hormuz risks spells out exactly how this global shipping and fuel shock hits U.S. dealership strategy.
Yeah, the mechanics of it are pretty intense.
The central insight here is that global disruptions raise oil prices and shipping costs, which nudges consumer demand heavily toward used and fuel-efficient cars, while simultaneously making parts delivery highly unpredictable.
The mechanism here is straightforward, even if it's painful for the industry. Higher oil prices inevitably mean higher pump prices. When you pull up to the gas station and it costs significantly more to fill your tank, you start reassessing your total cost of ownership.
Absolutely.
That psychological shift nudges demand away from larger gas-guzzling vehicles and pushes it directly toward fuel-efficient models, hybrids, and value-priced used vehicles.
But how does this hit the average buyer? Because just looking at sticker prices on a lot right now is enough to induce panic.
Exactly. The dealer brief points out that the average new vehicle price is hovering near $50,000.
50 grand.
50 grand. With prices that high buyers are already stretched to their absolute limits. So a sustained fuel increase completely amplifies payment-driven decisions. The pre-owned market is tightening up incredibly fast as people flee the new car sticker shock.
The numbers definitely back that up. The brief notes that wholesale used values are up 2.9% and auction conversion rates rose to 60.6%. And just to clarify, for anyone who doesn't track wholesale car data, and auction conversion rate is just the percentage of cars at a wholesale auction that actually get sold to dealers rather than passing through without a buyer.
Right, so a higher number means dealers are fighting harder to buy used inventory.
Exactly. And the day's supply of used vehicles is sitting at a really tight 28-day supply.
That 28-day supply number is the real canary in the coal mine. It signals a highly competitive, cutthroat, pre-owned environment. But the other side of this local squeeze is the parts department. Components with globally distributed supply chains are highly exposed to those shipping detours we just talked about.
Let's pause there. The brief specifically mentions electronics, ADAS modules, and collision parts. For those who might not spend their weekends in a service bay, what exactly is an ADAS module and why is it so hard to get?
Great question. ADAS stands for Advanced Driver Assistance Systems. It's basically the brains behind your lane keep, assist your adaptive cruise control, and your automatic braking.
Oh, okay.
These are highly sophisticated electronic modules that rely on semiconductors and global assembly lines. If the replacement sensors are stuck on a boat taking a 14-day detour around the Middle East, that car just sits in the dealership's backlot gathering dust.
Which totally disrupts what the industry calls the reconditioning cycle. Reconditioning is basically flipping a house but for a car. A dealer buys your trade-in, but they can't put it on the front lot to sell until it is inspected, cleaned, and fixed.
Exactly.
So if they're waiting on an ADAS module from across the globe, the reconditioning cycle lengthens, service backlogs build up, and the dealer bleeds money.
Precisely. Which is why the brief calls this an absolute execution test for dealers. Those who can source inventory efficiently and move vehicles through reconditioning quickly are going to capture that shift in consumer demand. But those who lag on reconditioning speed or those who are carrying the wrong inventory will see their margins severely compressed.
It separates the highly disciplined operators from everyone else. However, there is a blind spot here. What this dealer brief doesn't answer is whether long-term global shipping disruptions will eventually cause severe finished vehicle shortages, or if it will just result in ongoing agonizing parts delays. We know the parts will be delayed, but at what point do the showrooms actually run out of new cars to sell?
And since they cannot control the global supply chain, local dealers are looking for a defense mechanism. They need a moat to protect their business.
Which brings us to an incredible piece of strategy regarding loyalty and the service lane. We have a detailed breakdown featuring insights from Carfax executive Paul Najarian on the shift from one-time sales to lifetime value.
This is a huge pivot.
The central idea here is that combining service operations with vehicle data drives repeat revenue and secures higher margin used inventory.
This represents a fundamental shift in dealership philosophy. For decades, the industry was completely focused on the single deal gross profit. You sell a car, you try to make as much margin as possible on that one transaction, and you move on to the next customer.
Right. Churn and burn.
Exactly. But with new vehicle margins getting thinner and supply chains becoming chaotic, operators are shifting to customer lifetime value, or LTV. And the absolute holy grail of LTV is what they call homegrown vehicles.
I find this concept fascinating. A homegrown vehicle is a car that was originally sold by the dealership, serviced exclusively by that same dealership, and then eventually taken back in on trade by that exact same dealership.
It's the perfect circle.
Yeah, and the data from Najarian's insights shows that when a dealer flags and merchandises a car as homegrown, it sells faster and at a much higher margin. It makes perfect sense. It's like buying a used phone from a meticulous best friend who kept it in a case since day one versus buying it from a total stranger on the internet.
That's a great way to put it. It is the ultimate premium used car because the dealer knows its entire history. There are no mysteries. But securing that homegrown vehicle requires flawless execution in the service lane, and the clock starts ticking the moment a new car drives off the lot.
The pressure is on immediately.
The insights reveal that the first 12 months are absolutely make or break. If a customer doesn't return to the dealership for service in year 1, they are highly unlikely to return in year 2. You lose the service revenue, and worse, you lose the chance to eventually buy that car back.
To fight that, dealers are getting incredibly smart with data hygiene and coordinated outreach. And the numbers back it up. The report highlights a massive 76% first-year service return rate when dealerships utilized a co-branded Carfax Care app. Compare that to just a 57% return rate without it.
That is a staggering difference.
It really is. A huge jump in customer retention just from having accurate, trusted third-party maintenance reminders.
That 76% return rate matters immensely. Because the service lane is no longer just about fixing cars, it is a critical vehicle acquisition channel. Dealerships are systematically flagging in-service vehicles that meet specific age or mileage criteria.
So they're scouting their own service base.
Exactly. When you bring your car in for an oil change, an appraiser is looking at it, and they are empowered to make you an on-the-spot purchase offer. It allows the dealer to secure high-quality used inventory without having to fight over overpriced cars at an unpredictable wholesale auction.
Sure, I see the business logic. But playing devil's advocate here, as a consumer, do I really want my dealership tracking my mileage and pinging my phone constantly? How do they avoid just becoming spam? Because if I get 3 texts a week about brake pads, I am going to unsubscribe immediately.
And that is the exact tightrope walk they are facing. What this strategy doesn't answer is how dealers can perfectly avoid over-messaging fatigue. They have to constantly test to find that precise line between being a helpful maintenance partner and becoming an annoying nuisance.
It is a delicate balance. And while local dealers are optimizing every square inch of their service lanes to survive, the massive corporate entities above them are making their own radical shifts.
Right, the big players are moving pieces on the board.
The dual pressures of consumer affordability and supply chain chaos are forcing massive dealership networks and automakers to completely restructure their portfolios.
You see this playing out vividly in corporate strategy, like an announcement from Lithia UK regarding their Evans Halshaw brand. Mega retailers are rapidly expanding their footprint in volume brands to meet this exact shifting consumer demand we have been talking about.
The scale of this is wild. Lithia UK just acquired 4 Reed Motor Group dealerships to operate under its Evans Halshaw banner. To give some context to the listener, Lithia is a massive global player. With this acquisition, the Evans Halshaw footprint rises to 77 stores nationwide.
77 stores.
Yeah, they acquired 3 Hyundai sites and an MG outlet. And importantly, they're retaining 75 employees from Reed Motor Group while actually creating 38 new roles during the transition.
The speed of this pivot toward volume is what is truly telling. The announcement notes that Lithia's aggressive volume strategy has taken them from having just 2 Hyundai stores to 8 stores in a mere 18 months.
That is exponential growth in a very short window.
It really is. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights a massive strategic focus on specific regions and a heavy pivot toward affordable volume brands. It aligns perfectly with the affordability crisis we discussed earlier.
Because consumers are crying out for reliable, value-priced daily drivers.
Exactly. A $50,000 average new car price pushes buyers directly toward brands like Hyundai and MG, and Lithia is positioning its real estate to capture that exact demand.
Absolutely. They are skating to where the puck is going. But as with all major corporate acquisitions, press releases only tell us the shining positive parts. What that announcement leaves totally blank is the financial terms of the deal. We don't know exactly what Lithia paid to secure this volume footprint, which means we cannot fully calculate the financial risk they are taking on to make this pivot.
That is a very fair point, and it creates a fascinating contrast because while mega retailers like Lithia are aggressively expanding to capture volume buyers, legacy automakers are having to streamline and consolidate just to stay afloat.
Which perfectly transitions us to a major leadership shakeup over at Stellantis. There is a bulletin covering how this legacy automaker is consolidating leadership to streamline struggling brands as they reassess their long-term product plans.
Right.
And just a quick note for the listener, when we say automaker, the industry often uses the term OEM, which stands for original equipment manufacturer. So when we talk about Stellantis, we are talking about the OEM.
And the bulletin details how Stellantis immediately appointed Matt McAleer to take over Chrysler and Alfa Romeo North America. This comes after the sudden departure of Chris Fuel for personal reasons. What is wild about this is that McAleer is already the CEO of Dodge. So now he is wearing 3 massive executive hats simultaneously.
It is a massive mandate for one person. The bulletin points out McAleer has 13 years at the company across sales and marketing, and notably, he led the launch of the current generation Pacifica.
Which is their flagship minivan.
Right, and right now, Chrysler's primary focus is a Pacifica refresh anticipated for an upcoming model year, while Dodge is trying to maintain its performance-focused strategy.
The pressure on Chrysler specifically is intense. One automotive publication, Car and Driver, bluntly characterized the Chrysler brand as being fairly dormant over the past decade.
Fairly dormant is a polite way of saying they haven't given buyers much to get excited about. They oversaw the end of the long-running 300 sedan, and the lineup is incredibly thin right now.
Which is exactly why centralizing Dodge Chrysler and Alfa Romeo under one executive is so telling. It points to a critical, urgent need for efficiency. The automaker is desperately trying to regain momentum, get this Pacifica refresh out the door, and stabilize its product lines amid all this market volatility.
They just have to cut costs wherever they can.
When margins are tight and global supply chains are a mess, an OEM simply cannot afford bloated, separate leadership structures for every single brand.
They really can't. They have to stop the bleeding. But my biggest question here is about the future pipeline. What the automaker's announcement doesn't answer is the actual timeline for the new SUV and sedan concepts previously teased under the former leadership.
That's a huge unknown.
Are those concepts still happening? Are they delayed? Or are they just dead in the water now that leadership has consolidated? We just don't know.
And that uncertainty is the defining characteristic of the entire automotive landscape right now.
So if we zoom out and look at this entire map, from the cargo ships to the corporate boardrooms down to the service bays, how does this all connect?
Well, three distinct themes really pull all these sources together. First, affordability is undeniably the North Star for the entire industry. The macro fuel shocks pushing buyers away from gas guzzlers that we saw in the Bernstein analysis, combined with Lithia's massive aggressive push into volume brands like Hyundai and MG from the corporate announcement, prove that the market is rapidly shifting toward value.
The consumer is dictating the terms entirely based on their wallet.
It all comes back to that $50,000 average price tag.
Yeah.
And the second theme that jumps out is that the global supply chain ultimately dictates local success.
Right. You can't escape the logistics.
The geopolitical risks and shipping detours around choke points like the Strait of Hormuz from the first source directly translate to parts delays, unpredictability, and reconditioning bottlenecks at the local dealership lot highlighted in the dealer brief.
No.
You can have all the consumer demand in the world, but if your 80S modules are stuck on a ship taking a 14-day detour, you simply cannot sell the car.
Exactly. Which leads to the third theme, the absolute obsession with efficiency and customer lifetime value. Both local dealers, capturing service lane data to secure homegrown cars, as detailed by the Carfax executive, and massive OEMs like Stellantis, consolidating three brands under one executive, are playing the exact same game.
They are desperately trying to squeeze maximum lifetime efficiency out of the assets and customers they already have.
But it is not a perfectly harmonious picture. There are some fascinating tensions and contradictions between the realities these sources present.
There really are. The first major tension is the reality of the global shock versus the local buffer. On one hand, you have the Bernstein analysis sounding the alarm about immediate 14-day global freight delays and massive logistics cost spikes. But on the other hand, the dealer brief pushes back, slightly pointing out that existing inventory allocations actually buffer those short-term shocks.
So the impact is staggered.
Exactly. It suggests that the pain hits the parts department and the service bays long before it ever results in a totally empty showroom floor.
Right. The front of the house looks fine while the back of the house is on fire. And the second tension is the stark contrast between volume growth and legacy struggle.
This is a big one.
You have Lithia UK eagerly expanding its footprint and buying up dealerships for volume brands like Hyundai, showcasing a vibrant consumer demand for reliable daily drivers. But in total contrast, you have Stellantis forced to consolidate leadership just to resuscitate struggling legacy premium brands like Chrysler and Alfa Romeo. It really shows who's winning the current market dynamics.
It does. And if there is one practical, undeniable takeaway from all of this noise, from the geopolitical conflicts to the corporate musical chairs, is this. The service lane is the ultimate moat. Against a backdrop of $50,000 new cars, unpredictable shipping delays, and shifting corporate strategies, the local dealer's single best defense is acquiring homegrown used cars directly from their own service drive.
It is the one thing they can actually control in a chaotic world. We have seen on Auto News Talk that the distance between a cargo ship rerouting in a global strait and the trade-in value of the car sitting in your driveway is a lot shorter than you think.
It's all connected.
Next time you take your vehicle in for a simple oil change look around, you aren't just a service appointment anymore. To that dealership, you are the most highly valued supply chain they have. Keep an eye on how quickly your local dealer tries to buy your car off you. It might just tell you everything you need to know about the state of the global economy. Thanks for joining us on Auto News Talk. Keep your eyes on the road, and we will catch you next time.